Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Here's another problem application of the torque principle. We analyze a yoga exercise called the downward facing dog. Why is the body of a yogi considered in complete static equilibrium? Stick around to find out. Watch and learn. The problem is the yoga exercise downward facing dog requires stretching your hands straight out above your head and bending down to lean against the floor. This exercise is performed by a 750 Newton person as shown in figure 1. When he bends his body at the hip to a 90-degree angle between his legs and trunk, his legs, trunk, head, and arms have the dimensions indicated in the figure. Furthermore, his legs and feet weigh a total of 277 newtons, and their center of mass is 41 centimeters from his hip, measured along his legs. The person's trunk, head, and arms weigh 473 newtons, and their center of gravity is 65 centimeters from his hip, measured along the upper body. Question letter A. Find the normal force that the floor exerts on each foot and on each hand, assuming that the person does not favor either hand or either foot. Question letter B. Find the friction force on each foot and on each hand, assuming that it is the same on both feet and on both hands, but not necessarily the same on the feet as on the hands. As illustrated in figure 1, the yogi is doing the downward facing dog exercise. His hands are straight out and bending down to lean against the floor. The distance between the feet and the hip of the yogi is given 90 point centimeters, while the hands are 135 centimeters from the hip. The combined weight, W2, of his feet and legs is also given 277 newtons. And the combined weight of his trunk, head, and hands is given as W3, which is 473 newtons. We also emphasize here that the combined center of gravity of the yogi's feet and legs is located 41 centimeters from his hip, measured along the legs. And you notice that the combined weight, W2, of his feet and legs is drawn in our diagram such that its line of action passes exactly at the center of gravity number 1. Likewise, the center of gravity of his trunk, head, and arms, which we label also as CG2, is located 65 centimeters from his hip, measured along his upper body. And that the weight W3, which is the combined weight of his trunk, head, and hands, okay, also passes through this center of gravity number 2. And in this problem, in part A, we are looking for the two normal forces. N1 is the normal force exerted by the floor on the yogi's feet. But we are looking for the normal force at each foot. And the other normal force, N2, okay, exerted on his hands. But what we are after is the normal force on each hand. Recall that when you say normal force, it simply is the reaction force of the surface on which the body is uh, exerting the force. So the reaction force by the floor, okay, is directed such that it is perpendicular to the surface, hence the word normal. And the two normal forces here, okay, as represented by the vector arrows, they are directed vertically upward. And in part B, okay, we are also required to determine the force of static friction, which we label here as Fs. But specifically, okay, we are going to compute the static force at each hand and at each foot. In the diagram, we label each of these static friction as small f or small fs1. That is the static friction exerted by the floor on the yogi's feet, all right, which is directed to the right, while Fs2 represents the static friction exerted by the floor on the yogi's hands, and it has opposite direction to Fs1. Fs2 is directed to the left. Going into our preliminary computations, okay, let us first analyze our diagram. In this downward facing dog position, we can imagine a right triangle formed by the feet and legs as the shorter side of the imaginary triangle. All right. And its length is given 90 centimeters, while the longer leg of the imaginary triangle, all right, uh, comprising the upper body, meaning the distance from the hip to the hands, right, which is also given uh, 135 centimeters. But the hypotenuse, okay, is not given, unfortunately. All right. We consider the distance from the yogi's feet to his hands as the hypotenuse of the imaginary triangle. Okay. Notice that that is the side opposite to the 90-degree angle. All right. So the angle formed by the feet and legs combination with the upper body is given here as 90 degrees. Okay. So our goal is to determine the angle that is formed uh, by the leg and feet combination, the angle that they form with the floor or the horizontal, right? That is an important quantity that we need to compute. And of course, the angle formed by the upper body with the floor, right? So, applying the Pythagorean formula, right? As usual, we label the hypotenuse here as small letter c, all right? So, the shorter or the shortest leg measures 90 point centimeters, while the other leg or the longer leg measures 135 centimeters. So when we plug these quantities into the Pythagorean formula, all right, that is square root of the sum of the squares of 90 point centimeters and 135 centimeters. And when we do our math, we'll get uh, the length of the hypotenuse, or small letter c, is equal to 160 centimeters, rounded to two significant figures. So the distance between the yogi's feet and hands measures 160 centimeters. So using a trigonometric function, now that we know this side of the right triangle, and we are looking for the angle that the feet and legs form with the floor, since we consider the leg and the feet as the adjacent side of the imaginary triangle, while the upper body, all right, as the opposite side of that angle, we can use the trigonometric function tangent of the angle theta. So we label this angle as angle theta. And by definition, um, tangent theta here is simply the ratio of the opposite side, all right, which is 135 centimeters, and the adjacent side, which is 90 point centimeters, right? And to determine exactly the value of the angle theta, of course, we use the arctangent of this ratio. Arctangent can also be written as tan, all right, uh, expressed to the power -1, right? So with the help of your cycle, we find the angle theta equal to 56 degrees into significant figures, right? And of course, the complementary angle, which is the angle between the floor and um, the arms, all right, which we label as angle phi. right? So we get 34 degrees because since they are complementary angle phi here is just 90 degrees minus angle theta, or 90 degrees minus 56 degrees will give us 34 degrees. In applying the torque principle, which is our main solution to this problem, we choose uh, the feet, okay, which we label as point A, to be the axis of rotation, right? So this decision to choose point A is just for convenience. Remember, the choice for such pivot or axis of rotation uh, really doesn't matter. You can choose point A, point B, or the hands, or any other point, okay, within the system. So the system here is considered the whole body of the yogi in this downward facing dog position, right? And um, the forces, such as the weight W2, right, can actually produce a clockwise torque about point A, right? How do we know that the torque due to W2 is going to or tends to uh, produce a clockwise rotation of the body? Okay. Notice that the line of action of W2, okay, passing through the center of gravity CG1, all right, the line of action of W2 is downward, and the axis of rotation that we choose is on the left of this line of action. So the tendency is uh, for the body to rotate clockwise, clockwise around the chosen pivot, right? But in order to calculate for the torque due to W2, we need to know what we call the moment arm or the lever arm, which we label here as D2. All right. When you say lever arm or moment arm of the force W2, it is the shortest perpendicular distance, all right, from the uh, axis of rotation or the pivot to the line of action of the force W2, right? Notice that this distance D2, known as the lever arm, forms a 90-degree angle with the line of action of W2. And if you multiply them, okay, that's exactly the torque, all right? The torque produced by the weight W2 about the pivot or axis of rotation point A. But first, okay, we have to determine what this moment arm D2 is equal to, right? So again, you can imagine that there is a right triangle formed by the leg, all right, uh, exactly from the center of gravity CG1, all right, uh, to the axis of rotation, right? And that happens to be uh, 49 centimeters, right? The whole length from the foot or from point A to the hip of the yogi is 90 point centimeters, all right? But the location of the center of gravity, CG1, from the hip is 41 centimeters. And so that distance or length, which happens to be the hypotenuse, all right, of the imaginary triangle, all right, becomes the hypotenuse uh, equal to 49 centimeters. All right. Earlier, we already have determined this angle formed by the leg and the floor. Okay, 56 degrees, that is. So why are we using cosine of that angle? Because we are looking for D2, isn't it? D2 happens to be the adjacent side of this angle 56 degrees, right? And if you recall, again, the meaning of cosine of that angle is adjacent over hypotenuse. Hence, D2, or the lever arm, can be expressed as the product of 49 centimeters, that is the hypotenuse, and the cosine of the angle 56 degrees, right? Which, when computed, okay, will be equal to 27 centimeters in two significant figures. So that is uh, the lever arm that we need in order to determine, right, the magnitude of the torque due to the weight W2. All right, we can now compute the magnitude of the torque due to the weight W2. Okay, denote this here as tau sub 2, which is just the product of the weight W2 and the computed lever arm D sub 2. That is, tau 2 equals 277 newtons times 27 centimeters. And that is equal to 7.5 times 10 raised to the third power centimeter Newton. All right? Just to differentiate the unit for torque with that of work. Okay? When you say Newton centimeter, that is normally what most people use as the unit of torque, but that can be mistaken as work. So we just reverse it and use centimeter Newton. And as earlier mentioned, this torque tends to cause a clockwise torque about the pivot or axis of rotation point A. So we indicate that here by CW, meaning clockwise direction. Or conventionally, you can also use the minus sign, right, to represent the direction of the rotation. All right. Now, uh, the other weight, W3, okay, which is the combined weight of the trunk, head, and hands or arms of the yogi, okay, represented by this vector arrow, all right, W3. Take note that this is exactly at or passing through CG number 2, the center of gravity of the upper body, right? So, This force also has a corresponding torque with respect to the pivot that we choose, or point A, right? And we need to know uh, its corresponding lever arm, or the perpendicular distance from the pivot to the line of action of W3, right? But doing computing for the corresponding lever arm, denoted as D3, is quite challenging if we directly use as reference the axis or pivot point A. So to make it more or simpler, we first measure the distance from the line of action of the weight W3 to point B. Point B here, all right, is the point exactly at the hands of the yogi, right? We first determine that distance from the line of action W3. We call it D sub 3B, right? So with respect to point B, this D3B is just equal to the product of 70 point centimeters and the cosine of the angle 34 degrees, right? How did we get 70 point centimeters? Remember that the center of gravity, CG2, right? The combination of the weight of uh, the trunk, the head, and the arms or hands of the yogi, right, is exactly uh, 65 centimeters from the hip measured along the upper body. And that means, all right, the distance from the center of gravity CG2 to point B is 70 point centimeters. And that also happens to be uh, the what we call hypotenuse. Okay, that becomes the hypotenuse of another imaginary triangle formed, all right, formed by that uh, length, by that distance from CG2 to point B, right, and the two legs, all right, the distance from CG2 to the floor, as well as the distance D3B, all right, and we already know what this angle is. We called it earlier as angle phi, equal to 34 degrees. So since we are looking for the distance or lever arm D sub 3B, right, we can express it as the product of 70 centimeters multiplied by cosine of 34 degrees, which when computed will give us 58 centimeters, also rounded to two significant figures. All right. Now, if the distance d sub 3b is 58 centimeters, it follows that the lever arm that we need, right, the lever arm or moment arm of the weight W3 with respect to our axis of rotation or pivot point A is just 160 centimeters minus 58 centimeters. Remember, the distance between the yogi's feet and hands is equal to 160 centimeters computed earlier. All right? So 160 centimeters minus 58 centimeters will give us 102 centimeters, which represents the moment arm or the lever arm of the weight W3. You can now compute the amount of the torque due to the weight W3, which is just the product of the weight W3 and the computed moment arm D3. All right, this torque is denoted here by tau sub 3. That is, tau sub 3 equals 473 newtons times the computed lever arm D3, 102 centimeters, which gives us the torque due to W3 equal to 48.2 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton, and its tendency is to cause clockwise torque about a point A as well. That's why we indicate it here as CW. Okay? All right. Uh, another force that can cause also torque with respect to point A is the normal force N2, right? Represented here by this arrow, okay, directed vertically upward. So, with respect to our pivot, our chosen pivot point A, what is the corresponding lever arm of this normal force N2? Of course, that is the distance from the pivot point A to the line of action of this force N2. Okay? And that happens to be equal to 160 centimeters computed earlier, right? And since the normal force N2 is one of our target variables, so for now, we just express it simply as, all right, or the torque due to N, N2 is just expressed simply as the product of N2 and 160 centimeters. But it's uh, obvious that this force N2 has the tendency, all right, or the torque due to N2 has the tendency to make the system rotate in counterclockwise manner, okay, about the pivot point A. So we also indicate that here as or having a direction CCW. All right, so we have seen that there are three forces acting on the system, okay, that have corresponding torques, right, with respect to the chosen pivot or axis of rotation point A. Right. The other forces, uh, which are also acting on the system, but they actually would pass through the axis of rotation point A, are no longer included, right? Because uh, any force that passes through the chosen axis of rotation will have zero torque, right? So that includes, for instance, the normal force N1 exerted by the floor on the yogi's feet. All right, that force N1, okay, passes exactly through the axis of rotation. So it has zero torque. And that's also true for the other forces, frictional forces that we earlier identified, right? Static friction Fs1, for instance, okay, passes through the axis of rotation. And so with Fs2, its line of action also passes through the axis. So there are only three uh, parallel forces so far, right, that have corresponding torques, okay, about the axis of rotation point A. And that includes the torque due to the variable force N2. So we are now going to proceed in determining the value of the normal force N2, again, applying the torque principle. All right? So we just use the equation, which is another way of stating the torque principle. So uh, this symbol, summation of tau sub CW, means the the sum of all the torques that tend to cause the system to rotate clockwise. Okay, that must be equal to the sum of all the torques that tend to cause the system to rotate counterclockwise, of course, with respect to the axis of rotation that we have chosen, which is point A. All right. Another way of stating this is the total torques acting on the system must be equal to zero about point A. Right. So uh, if we are going to plug in our computed torques into this equation, we have the following. There are two what we call torques that tend to cause the system to rotate clockwise, right? And they are 7.5 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton, all right? And 48.2 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton. So they will be added and then equated to the product of n sub 2, which is our target variable, and 160 centimeters. So if you're going to isolate n2, all right, and add these two quantities, we will have n2 equals 55.7 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton. That's the sum of these two quantities. And then divided by 160 centimeters. So when we do our math, we arrive at the value of N2 equal to 3.5 times 10 to the second power Newton, or that is 350 newtons. But we are emphasizing that our answer has two significant figures, right? So that means uh, that the normal force, okay, at each hand is equal to half of that value of N2, which is 180 newtons, uh, also with two significant figures. Mhm. This is the amount of the normal force N2 uh, at each hand, that is. In finding the Uh, the other normal force exerted by the floor on the yogi's feet, denoted by N1, all right? We also apply one of the conditions of static equilibrium, and that is the summation of all vertical forces must be equal to zero, right? So since the actual weight of the yogi is given 750 newtons, right? That is the downward force exerted on the system. If we deduct N2 earlier computed from 750 newtons, that is 750 newtons minus 3.5 times 10 to the second power newton, then we will get, okay, the value of the normal force N1, which is equal to 4.0 times 10 raised to the second power newton, or that is 400 newtons. Again, we are emphasizing two significant figures. And moving on to part B, right, of our problem. By the way, the actual question is asking for the normal force uh, at each foot, all right? So we simply divide this by 2, all right, and get the amount of the normal force exerted on the foot equal to 2.0 times 10 to the second power newton, all right, or 200 newtons at each foot. So for part B, we are looking for the friction force exerted on the feet as well as on the hands of the yogi. So this time around, uh, we need to isolate, all right, this part of the system that includes uh, the yogi's feet and legs, including the hip, all right, isolate it from the rest of the body or system. In other words, we will only consider the forces acting on this part of the body, the lower part of the body. And this time, we choose the hip, denoted as point C, as our pivot or axis of rotation, right? So with respect to the hip or point C, we're going to also evaluate, okay, the possible torques, okay, that the forces uh, may produce, okay, with respect to this chosen axis or pivot of rotation. Right. Start or end. Of course, we will be applying the torque principle. So, using this as our uh, guiding equation, for the counterclockwise or for the torque that tend to cause counterclockwise rotation on this part of the body, we have the weight W2, right? Remember, the weight W2 is the combined weight of the feet and the legs of the yogi, right? W2. And uh, it is, or it passes exactly at the center of gravity of the feet and the legs, which is 41 centimeters from the hip measured along the legs, right? So, with respect to point C, our chosen axis, The lever arm corresponding to the weight W2 is the shortest perpendicular distance, right, from the line of action of W2 to the axis of rotation point C, right? So we can extend this arrow backward, right, and find the corresponding lever arm. That will be the corresponding lever arm equal to uh, the product of 41 centimeters. Again, you can imagine a small right triangle with 41 centimeters as our hypotenuse. And the the lever arm, right? The lever arm uh, being the adjacent side, right, of the imaginary right triangle. Okay, and we already know that this angle here is 56 degrees. All right, so the lever arm happens to be the adjacent side of the imaginary right triangle. That's why you are using cosine. Cosine of the angle 56 degrees when multiplied to um, the hypotenuse, or 41 point centimeters, would represent the corresponding lever arm of W2, right? So substituting this uh, value for W2 and getting the product of 41 centimeters and cosine 56 degrees, we will get 277 newtons. That's the value of W2. And the product of 41 centimeters and cosine of 56 degrees is 23 centimeters in two significant figures. So when multiplied by 277 newtons, we will get the corresponding torque, okay, produced by W2 equal to 6.4 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton, right? And you will notice that um, the line of action of W2, right, has the, or is, the line of action of W2 is to the left of the axis. So the tendency is for the torque due to W2 to make the system, the lower part of the body, to rotate counterclockwise. All right? Because the center of rotation, or the axis of rotation, or the pivot, is to the right of the line of action. Okay? Naturally, it tends to make uh, the system, the lower part of the body, to rotate counterclockwise. Another force, all right, that can cause uh, torque on the lower half of the body with respect to the axis of rotation point C is the normal force N1, right? So notice that the line of action of this force N1, okay, is on the left side of the pivot point C, right? So it tends to, or the torque that it produces tends to make the lower part of the body rotate clockwise, right? That's why we emphasize that here. And The corresponding lever arm or moment arm of N1 is the distance, perpendicular distance from the line of action, right? You can extend this arrow upward and from the line of action of N1 to the axis of rotation, that represents the distance represents the lever arm or moment arm, right? So what is that moment arm? It's just equal to the product of 90 point centimeters, all right? 90 point centimeters times the cosine of 56 degrees. How did we get 90 point centimeters? Notice that uh, the foot or the feet on which the normal force is acting, uh, from that point to the chosen axis point C, the distance is 90 point centimeters. And again, we can imagine that distance as the hypotenuse of the imaginary triangle, right? Um, if this is 56 degrees, right? If that is 56 degrees, then um, we can imagine that the angle formed by the moment arm and the hypotenuse, right, is also 56 degrees. And that happens to be uh, the adjacent side of the imaginary triangle. That's why we are using cosine 56 degrees. Okay. The value of that cosine 56 degrees when multiplied by 90 point centimeters, right, represents the moment arm or lever arm, okay, the distance perpendicular, right, to the line of action of N1 measured from the axis of rotation, right? So this torque due to N1 equals the product of the value of N1 earlier calculated, 4.0 times 10 to the second power Newton, and the product of 90 point centimeters and cosine 56 degrees equals 50 point centimeters in two significant figures. So when you do our math, we get the torque that is due to the normal force N1 equal to 20 uh, times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton, or that is 20,000 with two significant figures. All right. And of course, the torque produced by the static friction Fs1. Okay. So the static friction Fs1 exerted on the feet of the yogi, right, that is directed to the right. Why to the right? Right. It is because uh, the feet of the yogi tends to push, all right, tends to push the floor such that the reaction force of the floor is in that direction, uh, not represented in our drawing, but whose x component is exactly uh, equal to the static friction that we are describing now. All right, Fs number one. All right. Um, if the legs or the foot pushes the floor in this direction that I'm trying to described using this cursor, right? The direction is not necessarily along the legs, right? In other words, the direction of the push of the yogi's feet, right, does not make an angle that is equal to 56 degrees. No, it's not. All right. So, if that is the reaction is the force exerted by the floor, all right, on the feet, whose direction is diagonally to the right and upward, but the angle that it forms with the horizontal is in fact greater than 56 degrees. All right. We didn't bother to determine that force. Why? Because uh, the components y and x components of that force are already represented by N1 as the upward vertical component and the static friction Fs1. Did you get that? So Fs1 happens to be the x component of that reaction force coming from the floor exerted on the feet, while the normal force N sub 1 is the uh, vertical upward component. That's why uh, the reaction force of the floor on the feet, okay, the diagonal force, is no longer represented in our drawing. All right. So this what you call lever arm, okay, corresponding to the static friction Fs1, okay, is the product of 90 centimeters, right, multiplied by sine of the angle 56 degrees. Why is that so? Again, you can imagine uh, a right triangle consisting of the following what we call parts, right? 90 point centimeters happens to be the what we call hypotenuse of the imaginary triangle, right? And the lever arm that we need is the distance from the floor uh, to pivot point C, right? So from point C to the floor represents represents the lever arm that we need, right? So imagining the right triangle, that happens to be the height of the imaginary triangle, which if that height, okay, it's expressed in terms of the angle 56 degrees, all right, with respect to 56 degrees, all right, the ratio of that height over the hypotenuse is in fact the meaning of sine of the angle 56 degrees. So I hope that is clear, right? The product of the hypotenuse, 90 centimeters, and the sine of the angle 56 degrees represents the lever arm or the distance, perpendicular distance from the line of action of Fs1 and the axis of rotation point C. Right? So when we substitute, we don't know yet what Fs1 is equal to. So we let it be, the torque due to Fs1 is just represented now by the product of Fs1 and the lever arm, 75 centimeters. This is the result of multiplying 90 point centimeters, and sine of the angle 56 degrees rounded to two significant figures. All right, we just completed determining all the torques, okay, all the torques applied on the lower half of the body with respect to the chosen axis of rotation point C. So it's time now to uh, substitute all these torques in our equation. Okay, the clockwise, the torque that causes clockwise rotation must be equal to the sum of the torques that tends to cause counterclockwise rotation of the body about uh, the axis of rotation point C. All right, so we have 20 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton. This is the only torque, all right, that we have identified that would cause the body to rotate clockwise, all right? This is the torque due to the normal force N1. And then that must be equal to the sum of the two torques that tend to cause counterclockwise rotation of the body about point C. Right? 6.4 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton is the torque due to um, the weight W2. And of course, FS1 times 75 centimeters is the torque produced by the static friction Fs1. So our next step is to transpose 6.4 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton to the left, and then isolate the static friction Fs1. That is, Fs1 is just equal to 14 times 10 to the third power centimeter Newton, which is the difference between 20 times 10 to the third centimeter Newton and 6.4 times 10 to the third centimeter Newton. Of course, that will be divided by 75 centimeters. So when we do our math, we find the value of the static friction Fs1 exerted on the feet equal to 1.9 times 10 to the second power Newton, also in two significant figures. All right. Uh, this is for the 2 feet. All right. But what is asked in the question is the static friction on each foot. All right. Um, well, it was assumed that the yogi doesn't favor any of the 2 feet. All right. So we simply have to divide this in just a little while. Divide this by 2. Right. But you also emphasize the fact that the force of static friction Fs1, right, exerted on the feet must be balanced, right, by the force of friction exerted by the floor on the two hands, right? When you say balance, there should be no net force along the horizontal. So it's logical to say that uh, the amount of static friction exerted by the floor on the hands must have the same magnitude as Fs1, equal to 1.9 times 10 to the second power Newton, right? Uh, there's no need to uh, analyze the upper half of the body, okay, because the only question that we also would like to answer is the amount of static friction exerted on the hands. So we just applied here Newton's law of equilibrium so as to maintain, okay, static equilibrium, meaning that the body should not be rotating and should not be moving translationally. There should be no translational motion and no rotational motion. So that is the basis for our contention that Fs1 must be equal in magnitude to Fs2, but opposite in direction. So our final conclusion, right, to answer question in part B, static friction is equal to 95 newtons. This is half of 1.9 times 10 to the second power newton, right? This is at each hand and at each foot as well. So on this note, may I say, mabuhay till the next episode. MashaAllah. Thank you very much for your indulgence. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Alhamdulillah.